So I have this tweet on screen here, and this is from our buddy Jason. You
Mhm,
guys definitely go give him and Albert a follow. And he had this tweet that I'm going to read to everybody and then get your take on it, Albert. And this is him retweeting the post from the official KFA account celebrating the 3-2 win over Iraq. And Jason
mhm.
says, ultimately, our window was a success, but Klinsmann got the expectations so low that wins against Jordan and Iraq are considered unexpected and huge victories. Embarrassing, really. We played better, yes, but still nowhere convinced that Hong Myung-bo is good enough for the job. And I think he said something else underneath it.
Yeah.
He says, isn't it embarrassing for us to fear Al Tamari, Montpellier, Al Naimat, Al Arabi SC, and Hussein Al Khor, those are their clubs, when our
Mhm.
ambitions are to make it to the knockout stages of the World Cup? No disrespect to these Asian countries or players, but we should absolutely be smoking them. What is your take to that? Do you agree, disagree?
So, like, there has to be a nuanced perspective when it comes to this. I know people might hate it because they're like, "Oh, your team's trash or your team's amazing." Like, we have to acknowledge these teams in the Middle East have really progressed a lot in the past few years. Absolutely. They're giving Japan, Korea, Australia a run for their money, as they should. We're seeing these attacking players playing in different countries. But at the same time, like, in comparison to our development, right? In comparison to Korea and Japan's development, we absolutely should be taking care of these teams with no problem, right? We have guys at PSG, we have guys at Tottenham, we have guys at Bayern Munich. Korean football is now at a point where we have to be considered the cream of the crop, um, the the hottest girl at the club, right? Along with Japan. Depends on your taste, right? Maybe Japan is the more elegant, refined one, and then Korea is just more of that, like, that sex girl, who's a little more dangerous, but a little more exciting, maybe a little more high risk, high
Y'all
reward.
ain't more dangerous than
Oh,
Japan,
come
bro.
on.
Come
No, I
on.
meant like we
Albert.
might be bad, like, in a bad way. You know what I'm saying? Like, if
Oh,
you date
okay,
us,
okay.
we might disappoint you more than Japan. Does that make sense?
The Japanese are more mentally that's the more mentally
Stable. They're
stable
more
hot
mentally
girl?
stable. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
they've been to therapy already. I understand. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
Sorry,
okay, so
go on.
from yeah, no. So from that perspective, right? It's like, yes, we acknowledge the Middle Eastern teams are getting better, they can play ball, but at the same time, Korea is like should be up there with Japan if our federation wasn't such a mess and if Jurgen Klinsmann wasn't such a con artist, right? I think that's what Jason's trying to say. Cuz like yeah, at the Asian Cup, like nobody expected Jordan to tie us 2-2 in the group stage. And then in the semifinals, even I was like, oh, okay, well, Klinsmann sucks, but we should still at least take this to extra time or else you make it to the final, right? I think so. What we saw was so shocking and it really didn't like represent, I think, how good this team can actually be. So, like, from a this nuanced perspective I'm trying to bring, I agree with Jason. It is embarrassing. Hong Myung Bo, though, I mean, he did do a good job like like from a results perspective, right? 6 points out of 6.
Mhm.
But there's still some massive problems in this team, and there were moments where he did get lucky, especially against Jordan, where a ton of players in his starting 11 got hurt, and then the subs were actually kind of the ones he was forced to make, and those subs actually helped us win the game, not a starting 11. So Jason ain't wrong, man. Like, and honestly, like, I don't care how well we do against these Asian teams. Korea has qualified for every single World Cup. I'm trying to think since the 1990s or the 80s, I think. It's been like 10 straight World
10
Cups.
in a row. 10 in a
Yeah,
row.
10 in a row. It's an amazing accomplishment. Korean public is like automatic we should make it. Jason's right, bro.
Is he right? Okay, I'm gonna
He
push back.
is.
I'm gonna push back on
Okay.
this. I'm gonna push
Okay.
back, and I would love to have Jason on to have this as well. I mean, you do realize, from my perspective, as a non-Korean American, as Asia gets better, you're no longer going to be expected to just swat aside these teams. And so it's kind of I think Jason's being a bit of a victim of a little bit of bias, surely, but also I think he's underrating how the rest of Asia is developing. I mean, Jordan were probably, and I would say the best team at the Asian Cup. If we're just talking who played as a team in every single game and who looked good, it was Jordan. Iraq beat Japan pretty decisively in the group stage. This is a really good team. And So I kind of, when I was doing my predictions for these games, I was kind of like, I'm going to give Korea the slight edge because Jordan are missing two of their best players, even though Korea was without Sung Hyun Min. But getting out of this window with 6 points, I felt like it was a big deal for Korea because it kind of was Korea flexing their muscles a little bit and saying like, yeah, Jordan, it's cool you made the final. Yeah, it's cool you beat us in the semis. Yeah, Iraq, it's cool you got a fancy Spanish manager and you guys are beating up Indonesia and Vietnam for fun. That's cute, but we're still the guys. So I thought it was more of like a Korea overperformance, honestly. Like I think you guys looked better than what I was expecting.
Mhm.
But to say that, or I'll put it like this, I think the days of just expecting strong, decisive victories against teams like Jordan, like Iraq, like Uzbekistan, the tier two
Yeah,
teams in Asia, I think the days of the top dogs just running over them are
yeah.
gone. I thought Jason was a little disrespectful
Okay.
towards Jordan and South Korea. I think it was a big dub for you guys. I really do.
Okay. So actually fair, and I don't disagree with you. If we're looking at long term, like 5, 10 years down the road, absolutely Asian qualifying is going to be even harder now because, like you said, the Uzbeks are coming. The Uzbeks are here. The UAE stagnating but getting better. Jordan is coming. Iraq's coming. Right. If you look at it from that long term perspective, you're absolutely right. We're not going to dog walk this region anymore. But I think Jason and I are talking about right now. And right now, you mentioned the Jordan team we played. We're missing, I think, two of their best attackers. And for all the good things that teams like Jordan and Iraq are doing, and for as many like the quality of their star players is very high, but the depth for those teams just isn't there, I think. So when Iraq loses their main guy, when Jordan loses their main attackers, they're just not as threatening going forward, and they shouldn't be, especially against the players we have. So what I was disappointed was like we barely created anything against Jordan, in my opinion. We were sluggish. We almost gave up a few goals against them. And considering the fact that they were missing their best players, to me, that was an unacceptable performance. And then you go to the Iraq game. Defensively speaking, Choyonu was terrible. That first goal, I forgot. I think it might have been Hussein with that overhead bicycle kick.
Correct.
Sick goal, but Choyonu has to save that. He either has to save it or he has to come out for that cross. That's just incompetence from him, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And just like again, like I said, right now we should be easily winning. In the future, I agree with you, Jack. It'll get harder and harder. But right now, considering the quality of our players, their form for their club teams, Lee Gangin has been balling at PSG. He hasn't been putting up a ton of goals and assists, but he's fit very well in Luis Enrique's system. Son Heung-min, I forgot. I looked up his stats at Tottenham. He's been one of the highest, goal contributors in the EPL this year, just creating a ton of chances. Oh Hyung-gyu is balling at Gank. We got guys playing in I don't know. We got guys everywhere. We got guys in Germany. We got guys in England. We had guys in Scotland. We have guys in Belgium. So like, yes, I agree with you. In the future, okay, but right now, I think I was still disappointed, and I am worried for us because for me, this isn't a test for Home Young-bo right now. It was a test, but he has to play better teams. I want to see us play the USMNT. I want to see us play Croatia. Looking at our like fixtures coming up, bro, we got Kuwait and Palestine. What are we going to learn from those games? The next hardest game will definitely be the Iraq and Jordan games, the next fixtures.
Correct.
Okay, props to them. I'm happy you guys are going to give us trouble for the next decade and a half. But right now, I need to see more tests. And I don't know if Hong Myung-bo, like Jason said, is going to be able to pass those tests.
I don't disagree that if you're talking pure potential, of course, teams like Japan and Korea far out, exceed anybody in all of the AFC. But I think we're also falling a little victim here to, football's not played on paper. Like, just because somebody plays in the Qatari Stars League, it doesn't mean he ain't a baller. Like, and this is something that I typically see from like English pundits. It's like, oh, this guy plays for Al Shabaab, he must suck. And I think we need to be a little bit smarter about that. Like, do not, I've said this on my Twitter like 15 times. Do not tell me Akram Afif would not go to a European club and completely ball out. The dude he's absolutely unreal. I'm in Hussein. I don't care that I think he's in Qatar right now as well, or UAE. I don't care that he plays domestic football in Asia. Like, the dude is unstoppable. He's got like 15 goals in the last year for Iraq. So I think I didn't end up responding to Jason because I didn't want to argue over Twitter. But we know that that's not how things play out. I mean, Qatar have won the last two Asian Cups for God's sake.
Yeah.
South Korea, I don't need to remind you, Albert. I'm not trying to beat you over this. You guys haven't won an Asian Cup since the '60s. So it's not all about, oh, we have a guy in the Bundesliga or we got a guy in the Prem. It's a little bit different and a little bit more complicated and nuanced than that. And so again, maybe it's because I support Korea, but I'm not Korean, that I kind of look at it from more of a as a neutral. And I'm like, in my opinion, given what we saw from Korea in the past 12 months, the trajectory of the Korean national team, you know, draws against Thailand, draws against Palestine, 1-0 wins against China, losing at the Asian Cup, and how we've seen the trajectory of Iraq and Jordan, I think they were big wins for you guys. I think you guys needed to, like I said, prove no, we're still top three teams in Asia. We might not be forever. I'm very curious, when we do a podcast in 10 years, what that looks like. But I don't know. I kind of think the days of the super easy games versus the tier two teams are over.
I think I don't disagree with you, but I think you also underestimate the incompetence of the KFA and also the ability of Hajime Moriyasu to just totally shit the bed. Um, I'm going to start with Japan. So Japan did not have a good Asian Cup in terms of what they were looking for in the end result. But if Moriyasu doesn't play, I think it was Itakura, who's literally like the worst center back I've ever seen in my life. I just
It was the worst game of any defender I've ever seen in my entire
he
life.
no, it's his fault they lost that game against Iran. If he doesn't play, Japan probably wins. I'm not saying Japan would have
Correct.
beaten Qatar in that final because I think Afif was balling and I think Qatar just had something going for him. But I think Japan at least make that final. Looking at Korea, our chairman, he hired Jurgen Klinsmann because the technical committee, I
I'm laughing
believe,
because I've seen y'all's videos. That's why I'm
yeah, yeah,
laughing.
he
Yeah,
hired
yeah. Go check
Klinsmann
out
by
Being Me Baller.
yeah, he overrode the technical committee who had recommended a different manager. I think they recommended Roberto Moreno, who was a assistant for Luis Enrique, and just said, "No, I'm going to hire Jurgen Klinsmann because he's my friend. I've known him from my time in the States, and he's going to bring us lots of media attention for the 2026 World Cup." Um, for national teams, I think the vibe is really important. You could have the 11 best players in the world, and if you have the wrong manager or an overlord in charge that's just spoiling the vibes, it can ruin things, especially in Korea. And I'm not trying to use this as a cop out. Listen, the Middle Eastern teams are fantastic, and I'm happy for their growth, but especially for the Korean national team, and considering the media attention in Korea and how toxic the Korean media can be, that matters. It affects these guys a lot. I mean, Lee Gang-in was almost canceled and kicked off the national team because of a fight over ping pong at the Asian Cup.
Yeah, that was
So,
crazy.
given the incompetence of our federation, of the man running it, of just the chaos that's been surrounding this team, I mean, we've had two interim coaches before Hong Myung-bo was hired. Um, the draw against Thailand was again during an interim manager stint. I mean, again, it's not a good result, and again, you still have to. The results are the only thing that matters, and I don't want to make excuses, but we've been in turmoil for some time, and I honestly think if we had hired somebody else besides Hong Myung-bo, we probably maybe would have been looked better than we did against Iraq and Jordan. Not taking away from their accomplishments, but I really think a lot of our problems have to do with the stuff behind the scenes as well.
I think that's why I see it differently from you guys because I kind of see it as South Korea. You guys have been kind of beatable for a while now. Like we're going back to like a year from the times of when South Korea was like a truly scary national team. And so maybe I just have, obviously a different perspective, but maybe also kind of a fresher one where I'm like, I don't have all the nostalgia of when Korea used to run game. You know what I'm saying? Like, so because of that, I guess maybe I can see the forest for the trees, or maybe I can't. I don't know. Like, everybody's got their own opinions. I'm not saying
Actually,
I'm right.
I don't disagree with you. I think we are the way we to beat us is just to hit us on the counter because our defensive midfield sucks. We'll probably have possession against most of the Asian teams, but once we lose the ball at the halfway line or at the top of the box, that's when Jordan and Iraq can run at us. Absolutely, we're beatable though. I
Yeah.
agree with you there. Yeah,
Like you guys have very good players, but I mean, I remember like all the dialogue during the Asian Cup. Like everybody was pulling their hair out about Huangenbaum. They're like, "Oh my god, like so overrated. What does he actually do? Because does EJ Song is he actually going to contribute offensively? Kim and Jae's by himself in the back line, and Kim Jin Soo's is just an absolute disaster. You know, like there are some pretty average players still for South Korea. Like we don't have to go into this now, but if we formed like a Group B best 11, I mean, it is not just the Korean 11. There are
for
other
sure,
players who get in there. You know what I'm
thousand
saying?
percent.
So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I just wanted to get your take on it because I saw that tweet from Jason. I was like, interesting. Maybe I'm out of touch, but I was like, no, this is big for y'all. Like, I needed to get confidence back in Korea that they could beat these teams, and you did. And the away win in Jordan, I thought that one was maybe a little bit bigger. I love the fact that y'all scored 3 against Iraq. I thought that was great, and all goals were pretty good. A little sloppy from Iraq defensively, but yeah, maybe I'm just more bullish on the rise of the Middle Eastern teams more
Well,
so than he is right now.
no, no. And the last thing I'll say about this is that I think the expectations that Jason and I are kind of coming from is that for us, and maybe it's too much, we now expect or believe our target for this 2026 World Cup is a at least a round of 16 appearance, but is to win a round of 16 game and make the quarterfinals. This team, in my opinion, is good enough to top end talent. I'm not saying there isn't problems in other parts of the pitch, but if the USMNT is gunning for a last eight appearance, which I know they are, South Korea should absolutely be gunning for that as well, as should the Japanese. So maybe that's where our expectations and our dissatisfaction is coming from in regards to the wins over Jordan and Iraq that you talked about.
I can only imagine what the response would have been if you had lost one of those
Hong
games.
Myung-bo probably would have been fired.
You think so?
I think so. I
Already?
think there was a parliamentary audit where like our version of Congress called him in along with a bunch of other KFA officials and basically tore apart the process as which he was hired. It's a whole different topic, but the one thing I'll say is that the process to hire Hong Myung-bo was might have been even worse than the one to hire Klinsmann. We did Gus Poyet and David Wagner dirty, and the head of the technical committee of the KFA literally went to Hong Myung-bo's house at 11 p.m. at night. Went to a local bakery near Hong's house and just said, "Listen, I'll just give you the job. No need for an interview." So yeah, that's pretty bad.
That is pretty bad. We'll see if Korea go undefeated in the rest of round three. I'm very curious to see how that goes.